The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, written by Patrick Lencioni. Summarized by detailed book summaries. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you did, welcome to our book family. Chapter 1. The Challenge of Building a Functional Team. Patrick Lencioni's The Five Dysfunctions of a Team opens with a narrative that is both a fable and a deeply instructive study on the realities of leadership and teamwork. At the heart of the story is Catherine Peterson, a newly appointed CEO of Decision Tech, a fictional Silicon Valley company that, despite having a talented executive team, struggles to achieve cohesion and deliver results. From the outset, the book frames a universal truth. Teams fail not because of a lack of intelligence or expertise, but because of deep-seated behavioral dysfunctions that prevent trust, accountability, and results from taking root. Lencioni introduces the idea that effective teamwork requires more than skills. It requires vulnerability, discipline, and an unwavering commitment to common goals. Chapter 1 focuses on setting the stage by examining the dynamics of a typical dysfunctional executive team. Catherine quickly observes that while the team members are individually competent, they consistently fail to operate as a cohesive unit. Meetings are fraught with political maneuvering, hidden agendas, and defensiveness. Ideas are not challenged constructively, decisions are delayed, conflicts are avoided or suppressed. This opening chapter establishes the first key insight. A team's greatest obstacle is often internal, born of interpersonal fear and misaligned priorities. Lencioni uses the fable to illustrate this principle, showing how talented individuals can undermine each other without intending to, simply because the team lacks a foundation of trust. The first dysfunction, absence of trust, becomes the focal point of this chapter. Trust, in the context of the book, is not about confidence in someone's abilities, but about vulnerability-based trust. The willingness to be open, admit mistakes, ask for help, and acknowledge weaknesses without fear of judgment or retaliation. Catherine notices that her executive team members are reluctant to disclose gaps in their knowledge, seek assistance from colleagues, or confront difficult truths. This lack of transparency stifles collaboration, innovation, and problem-solving. For instance, during meetings, she observes that members rarely admit when they are struggling with projects, fearing that showing vulnerability might be seen as incompetence. As a result, issues linger unaddressed, frustration builds, and the team's overall performance suffers. Through the fable, Lencioni portrays how deeply entrenched behavioral patterns, such as competitiveness, pride, and defensiveness, feed this dysfunction. Catherine begins to understand that leadership is not merely about issuing directives or making strategic decisions. It's about creating an environment where people feel safe enough to be candid. She initiates exercises designed to build trust, including personal storytelling, role clarification, and transparency in admitting failures. The narrative shows the subtle but powerful impact of these exercises. Team members begin to see one another as human beings with strengths, weaknesses, and a shared stake in the company's success. The chapter emphasizes that trust cannot be mandated. It must be cultivated through consistent actions, vulnerability, and open communication. It is the foundation upon which the other four dysfunctions are built. Chapter 1 also illustrates the subtle interplay between trust and other organizational behaviors. Without trust, conflict becomes dangerous, feedback is avoided, commitment is shallow, accountability is weak, and results are compromised. Lencioni uses vivid examples from Decision Tech to make these concepts tangible. For instance, team members may nod in agreement during meetings but quietly disagree, refusing to engage in constructive debate. This artificial harmony masks deeper issues, allowing problems to fester. Catherine recognizes that overcoming these obstacles requires intentional interventions, structured discussions, feedback mechanisms, and a relentless focus on relationship building. She realizes that addressing trust first is not optional but essential. Without it, efforts to tackle other dysfunctions will be superficial and ineffective. In this chapter, Lencioni also introduces the reader to his unique approach of combining leadership fable with actionable guidance. He intersperses the story with clear analyses, outlining the five dysfunctions as a pyramid. Absence of trust at the base, followed by fear of conflict, lack of commitment, avoidance of accountability, and inattention to results at the top. The chapter establishes the narrative structure. The story shows real-world manifestations of dysfunctions, while commentary explains the theory, lessons, and practical strategies. This dual approach ensures that readers not only empathize with the characters' struggles, but also gain a blueprint for diagnosing and resolving dysfunctions in their own teams. Finally, Chapter 1 underlines a critical leadership lesson. Trust building is not a soft skill. It is a strategic imperative. Leaders who ignore or underestimate the need for vulnerability-based trust jeopardize their team's performance and, ultimately, their organization's success. Catherine's early experiences at Decision Tech demonstrate that even the most intelligent, experienced, or ambitious team cannot achieve its potential without a foundation of openness and mutual respect. The chapter ends with a sense of urgency and possibility. While dysfunctions are common, they are not inevitable. Chapter 2, Fear of Conflict, Breaking the Silence. As the 5 dysfunctions of a team progresses into Chapter 2, the narrative dives into the second dysfunction, fear of conflict, building directly on the trust issues introduced in Chapter 1. Patrick Lencioni's fable continues to follow Catherine Peterson, the newly appointed CEO of Decision Tech, as she confronts a team that struggles not just with interpersonal mistrust, but with a paralyzing avoidance of productive debate. The chapter emphasizes that fear of conflict is the natural consequence of low trust. When team members are unwilling to be vulnerable, they suppress honest disagreement, and in doing so, they create an illusion of harmony while critical issues remain unresolved. In the early scenes, Catherine observes meetings that are superficially polite but dangerously silent. Decisions are presented as unanimous, but the reality is that individuals quietly disagree, fear retribution, or prioritize personal convenience over candid discussion. Lencioni illustrates this through vivid examples. A marketing executive may harbor serious reservations about a product launch timeline, but chooses not to voice them, fearing criticism or a confrontation with more dominant personalities. Similarly, a sales director with crucial market insights might withhold concerns during strategy discussions, worried about appearing combative or disrespectful. These behaviors, though understandable on a personal level, collectively sabotage the team's performance, preventing them from addressing real risks and opportunities. Catherine recognizes that conflict avoidance is more dangerous than overt disagreement. Many leaders instinctively aim to maintain harmony, believing that conflict signals weakness, disrupts morale, or slows decision-making. Lencioni challenges this assumption, arguing that constructive conflict is not only healthy but necessary for high-performing teams. The fable demonstrates that productive conflict allows for the airing of differing perspectives, encourages critical thinking, and fosters better decisions. Without it, teams stagnate, fail to challenge assumptions, and inadvertently prioritize comfort over results. For Decision Tech, this lack of conflict manifests in delayed product launches, misaligned strategic priorities, and escalating frustration among team members who sense issues but cannot voice them. The chapter emphasizes the difference between artificial harmony and constructive ideological conflict. Artificial harmony, characterized by politeness, nodding agreement, and surface-level consensus, creates a dangerous environment where unspoken concerns accumulate. Conversely, constructive conflict is focused on ideas, not personalities. It encourages debate over strategy, process, and outcomes without personal attacks. Catherine works to model this distinction for her team, making it clear that disagreements about ideas are not threats, but opportunities to strengthen decisions. She begins to facilitate meetings differently, prompting executives to challenge assumptions, ask hard questions, and disagree respectfully. Lencioni underscores that leaders must actively normalize conflict by encouraging divergent viewpoints, rewarding candor, and intervening when discussions become superficial or suppressed. One of the critical insights of this chapter is the link between conflict and trust. Teams that fear conflict often do so because they lack trust. They are unwilling to admit weaknesses or mistakes, and therefore cannot engage in open debate. Catherine realizes that trust-building exercises from Chapter 1, such as sharing personal histories, acknowledging mistakes, and demonstrating vulnerability, are prerequisites for productive conflict. Once trust begins to take root, conflict ceases to be threatening and instead becomes a mechanism for collective problem-solving. Lencioni emphasizes that leaders cannot shortcut this process. Attempts to force debate in the absence of trust often backfire, leading to defensiveness, tension, and resentment. For decision tech, this means Catherine must carefully balance the pace of trust building with structured conflict interventions, allowing the team to gradually embrace honest dialogue. The fable also explores the behavioral patterns that exacerbate fear of conflict. Team members often avoid confrontation to protect egos, preserve personal relationships, or maintain control over outcomes. Some may deflect issues with humor, politeness, or vagueness, while others withdraw entirely. Lencioni highlights that these behaviors, though subtle, have a cumulative negative effect. Critical problems go unaddressed, poor ideas gain traction, and high-potential solutions are ignored. Catherine identifies these patterns in her executives, observing how even small conflicts, if left unresolved, create a culture of frustration and disengagement. By addressing the fear of conflict, she not only improves decision-making, but also strengthens the emotional resilience of the team, creating an environment where honest feedback is valued rather than feared. To overcome this dysfunction, Lencioni introduces practical strategies woven into the fable. Catherine encourages structured conflict techniques, such as setting clear rules for debate, assigning a devil's advocate, and actively soliciting opposing viewpoints. She emphasizes the importance of separating people from ideas. Disagreement should never become personal, and team members must feel safe to express dissenting opinions without fear of reprisal. Role-playing exercises, candid brainstorming sessions, and post-meeting reflections become tools for normalizing conflict and demonstrating its value. Over time, the team begins to recognize that confronting issues directly, rather than avoiding them, leads to faster resolution, more innovative solutions, and stronger buy-in from all members. Chapter 2 also highlights the leadership responsibility in managing conflict. Catherine models behaviors such as actively listening, asking probing questions, and acknowledging valid points, even when they challenge her own perspectives. Lencioni stresses that leaders cannot expect teams to engage in conflict naturally. They must cultivate an environment where disagreement is safe, productive, and ultimately aligned with organizational goals. The fable illustrates how Catherine's persistent efforts slowly shift the team's culture. Members begin to challenge each other's ideas respectfully, raise concerns without fear, and engage in debates that prioritize truth and results over ego or hierarchy. By the end of Chapter 2, the reader understands that fear of conflict is not merely a personality flaw. It is a structural dysfunction that can cripple even the most talented teams. Lencioni makes clear that conflict is a vital tool for uncovering issues, exploring alternatives, and achieving excellence. The chapter emphasizes that overcoming this dysfunction requires both trust and skillful leadership. Teams must feel safe enough to engage honestly, and leaders must guide, facilitate, and model productive conflict consistently. For decision tech, the transition from silence to candid dialogue marks a turning point, setting the stage for the next dysfunction: lack of commitment. Only after a team learns to engage openly and challenge ideas can they commit fully to decisions and take collective ownership of outcomes. Chapter 3: Lack of Commitment, From Debate to Decisive Action. In Chapter 3 of the Five Dysfunctions of a Team, Patrick Lencioni shifts the narrative to the third dysfunction: lack of commitment. Building upon the foundations of trust and constructive conflict explored in Chapters 1 and 2, this chapter illustrates a critical truth. Even teams that trust one another and engage in healthy debate often struggle to make clear, confident decisions and follow through. Lencioni, through the fable of Catherine Peterson and her executive team at Decision Tech, shows that without commitment, all the energy spent in discussion is wasted, leaving the organization mired in ambiguity, second-guessing, and inaction. Catherine quickly realizes that despite the team's increasing openness and willingness to challenge each other's ideas, decisions often remain half-formed or conditional. Team members nod in meetings and appear to agree, but privately harbor doubts, negotiate around decisions, or delay execution. Lencioni highlights a common phenomenon: artificial consensus. Individuals may agree superficially to avoid conflict or maintain a sense of harmony, but true commitment, the readiness to fully invest in a decision regardless of personal preference, is missing. This hesitancy undermines productivity, creates misalignment, and sows frustration among employees who rely on decisive leadership to move the organization forward. The chapter explores the root causes of this dysfunction. One key factor is the fear of conflict, the dysfunction discussed in Chapter 2. When team members avoid disagreement, decisions are rarely tested against differing perspectives, leaving uncertainty unresolved. Additionally, the lack of clarity in roles and objectives contributes to indecision. Team members may be unsure of priorities, responsibilities, or the strategic vision, which reinforces a tendency to hedge commitments. Catherine recognizes that for her team, commitment is not about winning every argument. It is about ensuring that once a decision is made, every member is willing to support it fully, publicly, and energetically. Lencioni emphasizes the leadership challenge in fostering commitment. Catherine understands that ambiguity is a decision killer. She introduces several strategies to combat indecision. First, she clarifies that the team's role is to make explicit decisions and communicate them without ambiguity. Each decision, whether about strategy, budgeting, or product development, must include clear deadlines, responsibilities, and desired outcomes. Second, she establishes mechanisms to document decisions and track follow-through, creating accountability and transparency. Third, Catherine works to cultivate a culture where disagree and commit becomes a guiding principle. Team members are encouraged to voice objections during debate, but are expected to support the final decision wholeheartedly once it is made. This principle reinforces that commitment does not require total agreement during discussion, only alignment in execution. The fable illustrates the consequences of a lack of commitment vividly. In one example, the executive team delays a major product launch because several members privately question the viability of the plan. This delay allows competitors to seize opportunities, reduces employee morale, and erodes confidence in leadership. Catherine realizes that hesitation, even when motivated by prudence, can be more damaging than decisiveness. Lencioni underscores that commitment is inherently linked to performance. Without it, accountability is impossible, results are compromised, and the team cannot function as a unit. The chapter drives home the point that commitment is an active, not passive, process. It requires clarity, decisiveness, and collective buy-in. Chapter 3 also explores the behavioral patterns that undermine commitment. Some executives struggle with indecision due to perfectionism or a desire to avoid risk, while others hedge their bets by withholding full support until outcomes are guaranteed. Lencioni explains that these patterns are often rooted in insecurity or fear of failure, but left unaddressed, they cascade into broader dysfunctions. Catherine tackles these behaviors by fostering a culture of clarity and alignment. She ensures that each team member understands not only what the decision is, but also why it was made, how it serves the organization's goals, and what role each person plays in its execution. Transparency and communication become essential tools in cementing commitment. A central lesson of this chapter is the power of clarity in leadership. Catherine demonstrates that teams commit more readily when leaders provide clear context, outline expectations, and articulate priorities explicitly. Ambiguity breeds hesitation, speculation, and half-hearted engagement, whereas clarity empowers teams to act decisively and confidently. Lencioni also stresses the importance of deadline-driven decision-making. Indecision often persists because discussions are left open-ended. Creating firm timelines encourages action, reduces procrastination, and strengthens organizational momentum. By the chapter's conclusion, decision tech begins to experience the transformative effects of commitment. The executives learn to respect the value of constructive debate during discussions, but recognize that prolonged uncertainty is detrimental. They begin to embrace decisions fully, taking collective responsibility for outcomes regardless of personal preference or individual disagreements. Catherine's guidance reinforces a crucial insight. Commitment is not about eliminating dissent, but about ensuring alignment and decisive action once the team has debated thoroughly. This clarity of purpose enables the team to move forward with confidence, setting the stage for tackling the next dysfunction, avoidance of accountability. Chapter 3 also introduces the link between commitment and results. Lencioni explains that without commitment, even the most skilled and well-intentioned team members cannot hold themselves or each other accountable. Hesitation, ambiguity, and lack of follow-through prevent the team from achieving its objectives and undermine trust. Catherine's work in fostering commitment highlights a recurring theme. Leadership is about creating the conditions for effective behavior. By ensuring that decisions are clear, discussions are thorough, and buy-in is active, she equips her team to operate with purpose and responsibility, paving the way for higher levels of performance. Chapter 4: Avoidance of Accountability, Holding Each Other to High Standards. In Chapter 4 of the Five Dysfunctions of a Team, Patrick Lencioni delves into the fourth dysfunction, avoidance of accountability. Building on the foundations of trust, constructive conflict, and commitment, this chapter explores a common yet often overlooked obstacle to high-performing teams: the reluctance of team members to hold themselves and each other accountable for performance and behaviors. Through the lens of Catherine Peterson and her executive team at Decision Tech, Lencioni illustrates that even when teams are aligned and committed to decisions, success can be sabotaged if individuals fail to confront underperformance or enforce agreed-upon standards. Catherine quickly observes a troubling pattern. Although the team now engages in candid debate and has committed to decisions, some executives consistently fall short of expectations without consequence. Deadlines are missed, deliverables are incomplete, and subpar work is tolerated. Lencioni highlights that this avoidance is not always due to laziness or incompetence. Rather, it often stems from discomfort with confrontation, fear of damaging relationships, or uncertainty about one's authority to hold peers accountable. In executive teams, where hierarchies are delicate and relationships high stakes, the tendency to avoid accountability can be particularly pronounced. Catherine realizes that if left unchecked, this behavior undermines commitment, erodes trust, and limits the team's ability to achieve its objectives. The fable demonstrates how avoidance of accountability manifests in subtle but destructive ways. Team members may privately grumble about a colleague's performance, but fail to address the issue directly. Others might micromanage instead of confronting peers, creating resentment and confusion. Catherine notices that this dysfunction is particularly harmful because it allows mediocrity to persist, sends mixed signals about performance standards, and ultimately diminishes collective results. Lencioni emphasizes that accountability is not punishment. It is the active process of ensuring that expectations are met and that team members are consistently aligned with the team's goals. One of the key lessons of this chapter is the interconnection between commitment and accountability. Commitment alone is insufficient if individuals are unwilling to hold themselves or others responsible for follow-through. Lencioni illustrates this through examples at Decision Tech. When deadlines are ignored, the momentum of projects stalls, decisions are undermined, and frustration spreads among team members who are committed and diligent. Catherine recognizes that accountability is essential not only for results, but for maintaining the integrity of the team's commitments. She begins to model accountability by openly addressing missed objectives, providing constructive feedback, and encouraging peers to do the same with one another. Catherine introduces several practical strategies to overcome avoidance of accountability. First, she emphasizes peer-to-peer accountability, encouraging executives to confront one another directly when performance falls short. Lencioni explains that accountability works best when it is not solely the responsibility of the leader. Teams function optimally when members feel responsible for each other's success. Second, she establishes clear performance standards, metrics, and expectations. By making objectives explicit, measurable, and visible, it becomes easier for the team to hold each other accountable. Third, Catherine normalizes difficult conversations, teaching the team that addressing performance issues is a sign of respect for colleagues and a commitment to shared goals rather than personal criticism. The chapter also explores the behavioral dynamics that perpetuate avoidance of accountability. Team members may avoid confronting peers due to fear of conflict, lack of confidence, or concern for personal relationships. Others may rationalize poor performance, assuming someone will eventually catch up or that minor lapses are inconsequential. Lencioni warns that these behaviors, if unchecked, create a culture where mediocrity is tolerated, deadlines are flexible, and results are inconsistent. For decision tech, this realization is pivotal. The team understands that even one executive failing to meet commitments can create cascading delays and weaken organizational performance. Catherine's interventions are designed to disrupt this pattern, reinforcing that high standards and accountability are non-negotiable. A critical insight of this chapter is the link between accountability and results. Lencioni explains that accountability is both an enabler and a consequence of high performance. When team members consistently hold one another accountable, the quality of decisions improves, execution accelerates, and trust deepens. Conversely, when accountability is avoided, even the most committed and aligned teams will struggle to achieve their objectives. Catherine's approach highlights the importance of integrating accountability into the daily operations of the team. Regular check-ins, progress reports, and performance reviews create a culture where excellence is expected and reinforced collectively. Through the fable, Lencioni also emphasizes the role of leadership in modeling accountability. Catherine demonstrates that leaders must be willing to address their own shortcomings openly and accept feedback from peers. By modeling accountability at the top, leaders signal that holding others to high standards is not punitive, but essential for the success of the team and the organization. Over time, decision tech's executives begin to internalize this principle, confronting one another when commitments are not met and celebrating the positive impact of adherence to standards. This behavioral shift strengthens the team's cohesion, ensuring that commitment translates into tangible results. By the end of Chapter 4, the team at Decision Tech experiences the transformative power of accountability. Meetings become more focused, deadlines are respected, and team members increasingly challenge each other to meet expectations. Catherine recognizes that while trust, conflict, and commitment lay the foundation, accountability is the mechanism that drives consistent performance and operational excellence. Lencioni underscores that this dysfunction is often the most challenging to address because it requires courage, clarity, and persistence, but it is also one of the most impactful in transforming team effectiveness. In summary, Chapter 4 of the Five Dysfunctions of a Team reveals that avoiding accountability undermines the best intentions, commitment, and talent within a team. Lencioni, through the journey of Catherine and her executives, demonstrates that accountability is not about punishment or blame. It is about creating an environment where high standards are upheld and individuals take responsibility for both their own performance and that of their peers. By fostering peer-to-peer accountability, establishing clear expectations, and modeling responsibility at the leadership level, teams can overcome this dysfunction, translating commitment into action and preparing the ground for the final dysfunction. Inattention to results, where the team's collective focus on outcomes becomes the ultimate measure of success. Chapter 5, Inattention to Results, focusing on the collective outcome. In the final chapter of the Five Dysfunctions of a Team, Patrick Lencioni addresses the fifth and ultimate dysfunction, inattention to results. This dysfunction represents the culmination of the previous four: trust, conflict, commitment, and accountability. Even the most talented, intelligent, and committed teams can fail if they lose sight of the collective goals of the organization. Through the ongoing fable of Catherine Peterson and her executive team at Decision Tech, Lencioni illustrates that while individual ambitions, personal recognition, and departmental priorities are natural, they must never overshadow the shared mission and results of the team as a whole. Catherine notices that despite progress in trust, conflict, commitment, and accountability, Some executives continue to prioritize personal agendas, departmental prestige, or individual achievements over the team's overarching objectives. For instance, a head of marketing might push a campaign that highlights their department's success, even if it does not align with the company's strategic goals. Similarly, a product development executive might focus on features that enhance personal recognition or technical pride, rather than addressing customer needs or revenue growth. Lencioni emphasizes that this focus on individual over collective success subtly undermines collaboration, dilutes energy, and prevents the team from achieving its full potential. The chapter underscores a critical leadership insight. The results of the team must take precedence over personal or departmental wins. Catherine recognizes that in order to sustain high performance, she must help the team internalize a culture of collective accountability for outcomes. Lencioni illustrates that inattention to results often stems from two sources: ego and status seeking, and a lack of clarity about priorities. Team members may act in ways that protect their reputation or career prospects, inadvertently sacrificing the performance of the broader organization. Catherine's task is to realign incentives, clarify metrics, and remind her executives that the success of decision tech depends not on individual accolades, but on collective achievement. Catherine begins implementing strategies to combat this dysfunction. First, she emphasizes clear, measurable team objectives. By defining concrete results, such as revenue targets, customer satisfaction metrics, or market share goals, the team can focus on tangible outcomes rather than abstract or self-serving achievements. Lencioni points out that clarity in metrics ensures that everyone knows what success looks like and can measure progress objectively. Second, Catherine aligns recognition and rewards with team results rather than individual accomplishments. Celebrating shared victories reinforces the importance of collective performance and reduces the temptation for team members to pursue personal gain at the expense of the organization. The fable illustrates the cultural shift required to overcome inattention to results. Team members begin to challenge behaviors that prioritize ego over results, support colleagues in achieving shared objectives, and hold themselves accountable for the impact of their decisions on the overall success of the company. Lencioni emphasizes that this transformation does not occur overnight. It requires consistent reinforcement, visible leadership commitment, and an ongoing focus on metrics that matter. Catherine models this behavior by demonstrating humility, prioritizing the organization's goals, and consistently redirecting discussions toward collective outcomes rather than individual interests. Chapter 5 also highlights the interdependence of all 5 dysfunctions. Lencioni explains that even with trust, conflict, commitment, and accountability in place, inattention to results can derail a team. Without a shared focus on outcomes, teams risk internal competition, fragmentation, and misaligned efforts. Catherine realizes that the ultimate measure of a team's health is whether it achieves the results that matter most to the organization, and that maintaining this focus requires constant vigilance and reinforcement. It is the final step in creating a cohesive, high-performing team, ensuring that the team's collective energy and talents are fully aligned with the organization's mission. Through the fable, Lencioni also addresses common pitfalls that threaten results orientation. Executives may revert to comfort zones, focus on departmental silos, or allow recognition-seeking behaviors to influence decision-making. Catherine counters these tendencies through ongoing communication, reinforcing the importance of results in every meeting, decision, and review. She also creates visible accountability systems, tracking progress and highlighting areas where individual or team performance may compromise collective success. The narrative demonstrates that results-oriented behavior is both a mindset and a set of practices that must be cultivated and maintained consistently. By the end of Chapter 5, Decision Tech's executive team has undergone a profound transformation. Trust has been established, constructive conflict is embraced, commitment to decisions is firm, accountability is normalized, and results are prioritized over individual or departmental agendas. Catherine observes a dramatic shift in both behavior and performance. Meetings are focused and productive, decisions are executed efficiently, and the team consistently achieves its strategic objectives. Lencioni uses this conclusion to reinforce a key insight. A cohesive, results-focused team is not the product of chance, but of deliberate, disciplined effort across all 5 dimensions. In summary, Chapter 5 of the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team demonstrates that inattention to results is the final barrier to achieving true organizational effectiveness. Lencioni shows that even highly competent teams can fail if individual interests, egos, or departmental priorities overshadow collective goals. Through Catherine's leadership at Decision Tech, the book provides a roadmap for overcoming this dysfunction. Set clear metrics, align incentives with team success, model results-oriented behavior, and continuously reinforce the primacy of collective outcomes. The chapter ties together the lessons of the previous 4 dysfunctions, illustrating that the path to high performance is sequential. Trust enables conflict, conflict drives commitment, commitment fosters accountability, and accountability ensures results. Ultimately, Lencioni leaves the reader with a profound understanding that teamwork is both an art and a discipline, and that the success of any organization depends on its ability to cultivate cohesive, results-driven teams. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. And if you did, welcome to our book family.